Now, what I know from many experiences is that if you'll come here and you'll engage in this work in this way, I won't change your heart. The person that you support will change your heart. I mean, there are so many people that have worked for us for a really long time that I've watched them evolve and grow and change the way that they think about the people they support and the world around them just because of day-to-day experience and exposure.
Hello, difference maker, and welcome to IDD Leader, the podcast that's all about helping human service organizations retain and grow their workforce using behavioral science. I am your host, Nate Beers. Let's dive in. Today is part 2 with Dr. Syard Evans, the CEO of Arkansas Support Network. In part 1, she shared about how they've created an AI tool that is revolutionizing the way that they provide care and helping the individuals they serve and bringing more clarity to the staff that are supporting them. In today's conversation, you're going to hear her share that some of the struggles and the successes they've experienced with their frontline workforce, how it's going with them, with their vacancies, with their turnover, and the different factors that have been playing into that, and what it looks like, where the rubber meets the road when you have a very mission-centered organization such as hers, and then trying to bring that into the everyday life of the workers and the frontline support professionals. And I think that you're going to learn a lot as she shares very candidly about how that's been going for them over the past number of years. If you stick around to the end, I also have a free resource for you that I don't think you're going to want to miss to help support your frontline supervisors. Well, without further ado, though, enjoy the episode. You guys are very clearly values-driven in a way that's beyond the norm. I mean, that's kind of an understatement. But so as you guys are screening applicants in the recruitment process or sometimes it might be happening actually after someone's accepted a job. They show up and they're like, oh, that wasn't just lingo. Like they really do some things differently here. Do you find that is like some people are like, oh, this isn't for me. I'm off the bus now. And other people are like, oh my goodness, finally. I mean, are you hearing things like that through your onboarding, or give me some picture, I guess, of how that's been?
Yeah. So we haven't always been good at articulating or even implementing our values, but we've always been this organization. We've always existed in this way. And so the evolution of our agency has very much been impacted by that. We are an extremely diverse organization in Arkansas. We have a workforce that's about probably 58% non-white, and we have 7 primary languages that are spoken by our workforce. We have always been a place that is known for our commitment to justice and equality and diversity, and we don't care who says what, where, when, and how. That is ingrained in who we are, and we don't modify program language. We don't modify public statements. We don't take down videos because someone somewhere said, oh, we're not doing that anymore, right? It is the essence of who we are. And we believe that those philosophies and strategies are foundational in the way that we see the people we support, right? That I often say disability is the ultimate intersect. And we have to understand intersectionality to understand how the world interacts with the people that we support, especially for folks receiving services. We're Medicaid funded. So if you are receiving services from us, you not only experience the marginalizing characteristic of disability, you also experience the marginalizing characteristic of poverty and all the others that come with, right? Gender, race, religion, whatever it may be. And so for us, there is no changing language to appease certain powers in certain moments that allows us to take the focus off of the world interacts with the people that we support based on the intersections of the marginalizing characteristics that they hold. And so we have to understand those, and we have to engage with those. We do that in a really matter-of-fact way, right? Like, I'm not asking for permission to say these things or believe these things. They're fact, and as long as they're fact that it impact the services that we provide in the lives of the people that we support, they're just going to be fact. We absolutely have folks that work for us that do not believe the way that we believe.
Yeah.
But they understand the expectations about roles and work and how we move and how we behave, right? Part of our commitment to our philosophy is transparency and fairness. And, it's interesting because we often navigate difficult situations, right? We exist in a way as a provider organization where we believe that the people we support should be empowered to make their final decisions. And every now and then we come across situations where people we support want to make racist and discriminatory decisions about who they hire and who support them. And so we don't stop supporting them, but we do engage in those difficult decisions, right? We do have real talk conversations. I have gone to lots of meetings to say, okay, here's the deal. You have the right to make this decision. It is the wrong decision. We don't agree with it. And it's a short-sighted decision because we don't have enough DSPs to screen out folks in the way that you're asking us to do. But you have the right to make this decision, right? That though both of those things can be true at the same time. And so we embrace the reality of that. There are absolutely people that won't want to work for us because of these things. There are absolutely people that don't want to work for us because of these things, but still do. And that's okay, as long as the foundation of the organization and the expectations are met. I don't have to change your heart. And I think that's the power of L, right? Like, what I have to do is to be very clear with you about what the expectations are of your role. And these implementation materials make us better at doing that. Now, what I know from many experiences is that if you'll come here and you'll engage in this work in this way, I won't change your heart. The person that you support will change your heart. That it is in those. There are so many people that have worked for us for a really long time that I've watched them evolve and grow and change the way that they think about the people they support in the world around them, just because of day-to-day experience and exposure.
Yeah, that I understand what you mean by that. Sometimes it's the experiences that we're in that change us the most, and often in ways that we don't expect.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, and when we talked before, you had mentioned kind of from that behavioral analyst lens, like the power of experiential learning.
Yeah.
There are things that I could say to you a million times over in the most eloquent and whatever. I have people often I'll say things to them and they'll look at me with this kind of awe in their eye and they'll be like, you really talk good, and I think, damn, they didn't hear what I said. They heard how I said it. They connected with the passion I used to say it. Like, it was an experience for them, but the content, it didn't land in a way that they're going to be able to do anything with. But the day-to-day experience of that often is a far more powerful teacher than any type of lecture or reading or, online learning module that we could ever give you.
Yeah. This is connected, but it's changing gears a little bit. What does turnover look like for you guys? And what are you doing about it, or what have you been doing about it? How's it going?
So turnover currently is probably creeping up closer to that national average. It's interesting. This is a tangent because they're always there. But our state just recently, after we've done a ton of advocacy, legislative advocacy. Our legislature just pushed over a requirement in this last session for our state to conduct a rate study for home and community-based services. And it seems like it should be good news. And the podcast listeners won't be able to hear me roll my eyes, but I did roll my eyes when I said that, because the issue with that is that the caveat that's written into the legislation is that you have to go through this process of rate study, and if there is any available money in the budget, then execute whatever recommendations come out. So it's kind of dead in the water before you start, which is frustrating. But then it gets more frustrating as you go, because the process of rate study is there were a handful of providers that were selected, wide range of providers that were selected to participate. And participate looked like, we're going to send you a spreadsheet with 27 tabs that all have complicated individual instructions for each of the tabs and each of the areas and formulas you have to calculate. Just nonsense. But what my finance team was working on this this spreadsheet to collect data for the rate review. And, they got to a certain point and they were like, we just want to meet with you, kind of walk you through this and show you where we are and see, if we're missing anything. One of the things that immediately stood out to me was each of the spreadsheets, they're looking at different data points, different things, the admin cost and the rates of DSPs, and there's a tab for overtime or whatever. And there was a tab for retention. And the formula to pull the data for retention was different in the time span that it was focused on than some of the other tabs. Some of the rates and the OT went right up to present day or close to it. But the tab that looked at retention rate was for fiscal year 23-24. And that was a huge red flag for me, because our turnover rate in that year was 32%, which is probably about 10 points better than we usually run.
Okay.
It was during a time where the state had ARPA incentives for frontline workers. We were able to tag on to nurses and hospital, and so we were paying out a $600 retention bonus every month to our DSPs, and like $1,000 recruitment bonus for new hires. So, 32%.
So it was an outlier in a positive way, with a funding stream that was limited time.
Yes, that's no longer in place.
It's not there.
And that is the data point that we're trying to pull. Yeah, no, not at all. Not at all. But that's the data point that the consulting team that the state has employed to do this rate study is using. I wrote up a big thing on it. I'm sure it's not going to be attended to, but typically and I haven't. I should have, for this conversation, pulled where we currently are. But once those recruitment bonuses ended, which they ended in March of 24, we've started that gradual move back up. Now, I will say that we probably will not return wholly and fully to standard operation at the national average, just because we are doing a lot of innovative stuff around enabling technology and really doubling down on promoting and supporting independence.
Yeah.
And so, one of the things that we're doing in line with that is supported living has often been looked at by the industry, by people receiving services, as kind of like this support that you put in place so it's there when you need it, right? That you We support a lot of folks that have been over-supported for a long time. During big swaths of time in Arkansas's history, the state would actually mandate 24/7 services for people. If your plan was over a certain dollar amount, it was almost like it was punishment for asking for a certain dollar amount of services, then the state would mandate providers to provide 24/7 services. Even if those 24/7 services cost more than the max allowed for the plan, they still would mandate providers. And so what that did was it really created this expectation for a lot of service recipients that I need to have those hours in my plan. If I don't have those hours in my plan, then I'm not going to have them when I need them.
Yeah.
That I need that there. And so we're really working hard to kind of pivot that. We don't want to pay somebody overtime to sit on your couch and wait for you to need to go somewhere. Instead, we want to be able, we're kind of branding it flex support, where we want people to be able to submit a request and say, these are the things I need support with this week. And we're putting kind of a logistics coordinator in place to be able to coordinate us giving you the support that you need specifically for the thing that you need when you need it, and backing away from this having a warm body present, just waiting. They're doing two things. They're waiting for you to need their support, and they're also pissing you off in the process, like while they're there existing in your space. It's creating conflicts that don't have to be there. And unfortunately, then the system looks and says, well, this person has a behavior challenge because they got into an argument with their DSP.
But it's just because the DSP was there fulfilling the utilization of hours or the requirement of hours, huh?
Waiting on, the trip to the doctor or grocery store or med count or, these kind of one-off things that absolutely that person needs that support then. They need that to occur. They don't need the 4 hours of breathing the oxygen in my apartment leading up to that. So trying to be more creative with that.
Yeah. And then how's it been going for you guys as far as, a lot of providers wrestle with high vacancy rates. How's that going for Arkansas Support Network, and what strategies either are working or you've tried them and they're not working, or just how's that going?
Absolutely. Yeah, we have extremely high vacancy rates. One of the strategies is really looking at the flex support and the enabling technology, really looking at in all of those. Our plan management team has developed the practice of at that point of plan renewal, we're actually doing an audit to say, okay, how much service were you approved for last plan? How much service have you actually received? How much of that service is at an overtime rate? And triggering referrals to our specialty supports department, to our technology and innovations department to say, hey, before we submit this plan and make the same request that we made last year, let's come in and look at how can we innovate this in a way to make sure that we're supporting this person to live the life that they want to live and achieve the goals that they want to have, and doing it in a way that doesn't mandate the organization paying out overtime reimbursements or distracting the hiring process, from those roles and positions that need to be filled with direct support professionals. So that's really a key component for it. And I think we're just now at a place where we're starting to get some good traction with that, make some good progress. And we're seeing, it's exciting because we're seeing some folks. We just had a board committee meeting last week, and one of our team members was reporting on some of these situations that we've kind of conducted these audits and reviews at plan renewal time, And they gave 2 examples of people that we support that have really taken the lead and kind of looking at that. Both of the examples that they gave had reduced plans that previously were authorized at a 24/7 approval, and both of those plans have reduced 20 hours a week of direct support. One did it with enabling technology and remote access to remote support, and the other one did it with just an expansion of independence and being able to take that VEL plan and be more targeted and specific about the support before and after that period of independence. So making sure that we're being more intentional to set you up to be successful in that time that you're managing on your own, and better planning to make sure that you have access to support resources if you need during that time. Just really being more thorough in the way that we plan for that independence has allowed us to support people better to be more independent, which is exciting.
Yeah, and that greater independence is kind of it's almost like you're creating greater efficiencies so that less hours need to go into places where they didn't really need to go into, or at least not in that manner. With enabling technology, there still might be sort of this on-call feature or whatever else, but it's different than just sitting in the room sharing oxygen, as you were saying.
Absolutely.
And I see how that could impact then your amount of vacancies, where actually there's a little bit fewer positions needed in the sum total by doing it that way. So that's really neat. I wanted to ask you, this has come up already some in what we've been sharing, but having the one-to-one, the community-based services, in a previous conversation with you, you'd shared about how that kind of starves the infrastructure because it's not, those rates aren't really built in for then helping for supervisors, admin staff, these kinds of things. So I was wondering, and this kind of even gets back to what you were sharing when you talked about the shift guides for DSPs, where you're trying to sort of standardize what's expected of them through this AI tool that you've built out. How do you make sure that the staff are following the shift guides, or how do you make sure when there is this squeeze on the admin staff, on the supervisory staff, what's it look like to maintain quality of the services that are being provided?
Often it looks like chaos and a perpetual opportunity to improve.
Okay.
Everything that we do, when we do it well, is relationship oriented. And so what I recognize and what I see is the ways in which we historically as an organization starved the infrastructure. We got to a point where we created supervisory and administrative relationships that were impossible, right? That we grew. We have always been in high demand, largely because we will support folks that nobody else will. And so never at any point in the history of our organization, including during COVID, have we not grown as an organization. Now, we have certainly made some just out of necessity. Coming out of COVID, we now have a wait list for services that we have never had before as an organization. And we continue to work with folks who have come to us for services, even when we don't have direct support professionals to start services with them. We continue to offer specialty supports and other innovative services, and are even looking at the value of the flex support model for those folks that are waiting for more services, more robust services. But, that is the biggest challenge. We started really about 6 years ago, we navigated some challenges as an organization and just said, I think for me especially, obviously I have an unhealthy relationship with this place. And it's a great relationship, and I'm grateful for it, and I'm a better human being for it. But it is not realistic to think that anyone else in the universe would sit in my seat and make the sacrifices that I make personally to figure out how we make this work. And so it's long been important to me that we return to the focus of building out a sustainable infrastructure. Because there are aspects of our budget that are really important to our philosophy and our mission, and there are ways that we spend dollars and invest dollars in certain things that don't make money. They're not. It's not. I often say, this is the type of support we provide, and if you're familiar with it, it's a terrible business model. It's not. These reimbursement rates are not designed for you to have good, robust finance, accounting, human resources, legal infrastructure. There's nothing in there for that. And especially if you're having to pay out a lot of overtime in order to be able to support people. And so we've really, for about the last 6 years, been very intentional in slowly turning our focus to reinvest in infrastructure. And right now, I think we're at the place that lines up with the question that you're asking, that getting back to a point where DSP development is the number one focus in what we do. Getting back to a place where we've had a really large, for us, personnel team. We've had a lot of managers in that team that we put in place a couple of years ago. And over the last year, we've really evaluated the effectiveness of that. And what we found was that, it's a large team, it's hard to manage, and we're still not getting what we want with DSP, direct communication, and training development. So we're kind of sectioning off part of that team to create that DSP development specialty team, so that every single DSP that we support. Right now what happens is that we have pockets where these things happen well, and then we have pockets where they don't. And in the places where they happen well, we see really good stuff, and in the places where they don't, we don't.
Sure.
But really making sure that every DSP that works for us has an individualized, specific, clear employee development plan, DSP development plan, that anchors itself in that the plan, the support plan for the person receiving services or the people receiving services. And we've returned really over the last 5 years to when it's possible, when we have spare change laying around, we usually open up an application to the ASN DSP Academy, which is just NADSP's DSP certification, where we've got extra coins, so we pour those into giving DSPs the opportunity to get certified and get trained. And there is always a quality benefit for that. When we can spend the time with DSPs to go through 50 hours of training and navigate conversations about implementation of core competencies and things like that, they always get better, and we always see better results out of the support and services that they're providing. We just have to be really mindful and thoughtful about how we expand those opportunities for folks.
Yeah, I understand what you're saying with all that. I want to kind of, I guess, wrap it up a little bit, but with this. With this question, what should providers do? Let's suppose that they're very excited about the missional and values clarity that you have. And for every organization, yes, they'll define it differently. But what's the next step they can take in two different ways? One would be kind of just decision-wise to start to implement that. And number two is I want to find out how can they learn more about this AI tool. So those are related, but what should their first step be?
Yeah, so the first step is that you have to do the work that's required to get to a level of clarity and specificity about what your values are, right? Like I think in our industry, I think in lots of industries, we all want to kind of be that values-based, mission-led, whatever, and we focus on the process to get there before we really define what there is, right? That you have to, when we started this work, I think there were 3 components that became instrumental for us. The first was we went through a goal and values pillars process of establishing those for us, and it was probably close to 10 years ago when we did it, and we went through months of kind of refining and clarifying and questioning, and we empowered leadership within the organization, but we also made sure that stakeholders from across the organization were able to contribute to that conversation as well. And we still, that overarching goal and those 3 value pillars still guide our decision making today and what we're doing. And so that's how I often say that's how we know we got it right, is that it still applies, that it is the floor that we stand on no matter what it is we're trying to do. And I think a lot of organizations don't invest in that piece of it before they get started. And that makes it harder, because if the floor that you're standing on is quaking and moving and falling out from under you in places, it makes the progress towards your end goal that much harder. So really establishing that floor, I think, is essential.
Yeah, I've heard that a lot too. And just to jump in for a moment and to say, even in the work of Patrick Lencioni, who does a lot with developing healthy teams and healthy organizational health, one of the things that's stood out from work of his that I've read is that usually whenever you think you're clear, then you need to still go like another 2 or 3 times at it to really get clear, and that often it's that clarity that can be a differentiator on then being able to move forward with execution, because often we're very quick to want to move towards the execution piece, but until that clarity is established. So I think that really is similar to what you're saying.
No, it absolutely is, because, values and philosophy are often kind of these aspects that we engage with and we like, right? Like, oh, I like that. I like that. Me liking that is very different than me being willing to die on that hill, right? Than me being willing to go to war with powerful people over this thing, yes. Right? And so it takes time to really be able to drill down and to really be able to get to that space and that place where this is just matter of fact for us, right? Our second pillar, the one that sits right in the middle, talks about our commitment to justice, to social justice, to disability justice, and to provide supports in a way that is mindful of and acknowledging of intersectionality, right? So I say a lot of things and talk about a lot of things that make other people completely uncomfortable, but I do it without an ounce of hesitation because it is grounded in this pillar and this commitment that we have. So that's essential. And then, I have to always be mindful of the fact that leadership of the most impacted is required. It's the second principle of Sins Invalid's 10 Principles of Disability Justice. And it doesn't matter how good my ideas are, and I have great ideas. They don't mean anything if the people that we support and the people who work for us aren't empowered with decision-making power in this process. And then the third thing is find your doctrines, right? Like, defining those principles very clearly, very directly, very specifically is important. But then you need the instruction manuals. You need that information. And most of the time you don't have to reinvent the wheel for that. For us, it's the 10 principles of disability justice, it's CQL's basic assurances, it's NADSP's code of ethics and core competencies, and it's charting the life courses planning framework. Those 4 things we selected and determined those are our core doctrine. And they're industry specific, which is important. It helps. But they also pass the test. They meet all of our value pillars and all of those principles. And so we're able to use them as guides and manuals and instructions so that you don't have to recreate the wheel in how we exist as an organization and culturally.
Okay, wonderful. Well, thank you so much for all the insights you shared today. Fascinating stuff with the integration of AI and the justice and the values of your organization being integrated all the way in, and then also the recognition of some challenges with workforce issues like every other organization is wrestling with. And so really, really valuable conversation. Thank you so much, Syard, for your time today.
Yeah, thank you. I've enjoyed it.
There was a lot to digest from that conversation. And I think one of the things that really jumped out at me was the importance of clarity, being very clear on your mission, your values as an organization, and then doing everything you can to embed those across the whole culture. And then looking at, well, where does the rubber meet the road when it comes to developing the workforce that they're actually given the tools they need to live those values at work in support of the individuals being served. I've got an idea for an action move or a next step that you could take. And that would be at your next leadership team meeting or whenever you get together with colleagues or the team that you're leading, to ask everyone in the room to articulate the most important values. No cheating. They can't look at your website or whatever the stated mission statement is, and maybe you've got some high achievers that have actually memorized it. But to articulate what values do they actually see being lived out? Not what do they think should be, but what do they see that actually is? And then, so that's part one. What values are they witnessing? And then part two would be to ask, do these reflect what we really want them to be reflecting? And just engage in some conversation around the values and the mission that's being embodied at your organization right now. And I think you'll gain a lot of insight, especially as you hear from the other members of your team, because they'll bring some different perspectives on that as well. Now, I want to make sure to give you that resource. It's a PDF, free download, for 4 supervisor habits that help reduce DSP retention. Really, they're just best practices, like how to be a good boss. And you can get your free copy of it at iddleader.com/supervisor. Help your supervisors to support their frontline workforce. And there's even a checklist in there so they can kind of self-assess, are they doing these things, or what does it look like to get these started? I think you'll find it to be a hugely helpful resource. And just like in last week's episode, I will also put Syard Evans' contact information that she shared with us in the episode in the show notes, so you can find it there. And cannot wait to continue our conversation with you on what it looks like to keep developing a healthy, vibrant workforce of DSPs who want to work there, love their jobs, and are doing a great job serving those who they support. Well, until next time, here's to you, difference maker. Keep up the amazing work.